In today's video, tuck hips. So we've had a look at the initial 4 key concepts of the stack and tilt template. So namely weight forwards, shoulder down, hands in, arms straight. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, then please do head back to my channel to see them. And today, the final 2, tuck hips. They are very important because they enable you to hit the ball with a straighter swing direction, to hit the ball further, and to hit the ball higher. All things that we all want to learn to do. Who doesn't want to hit the high bomb? It's part and parcel of golf. It's what we're all trying to do every day when we get to the golf club. So we're going to define tuck hips, what it really means, what does it look like, what does it look like when it's incorrect, and then I'll show you how you can work on it to incorporate it into your game. First of all, what does it mean to tuck the hips? How do you recognize it? Well, think of the pelvis as at a rest, it's in a flexed position. So the belt buckle at this point in time is actually pointing downwards. It's flexed. At the end of the swing, the belt buckle is no longer pointing down, it's actually pointing upwards. Only it's rotated so it faces the target. So it doesn't point down, it points upwards. So the tucking of the hips is the motion of going from flexion to extension. Furthermore, what you're trying to do is to elevate the level of the hips, not just through the hips themselves, but that is greatly assisted by the motion of the knees. So the knees are straightening as you're doing that. So I'm in position, I'm rotated to face the target, my knees don't stay bent, my knees extend. And you can see that's helping my belt buckle to point more upwards. And without the knees' help, it would be impossible. Furthermore, it's not just the knees and belt buckle that are extending, that are rising, it's also the chest. So I'd address my chest points down to the ground, and would follow through my chest point up to the sky. So it's the straightening of the lower limbs, the raising of the belt buckle, the extending, the stretching of the upper body so that it faces towards the sky. This puts us in what we describe as the tucked hips position, like so, which is the picture you see all good players finishing. If you line them up side by side, this is what they look like. Then, what should it not look like? And this is something you'll see week in, week out on the golf course, is that people make their swings, and for whatever reason, as they come through the golf ball, they stay flexed like this. And the shoulders go forwards of the hips, with the belt buckle, the chest pointing down to the ground, like so. So if I just hit a golf ball with me tucking my hips, followed by a golf ball where I don't tuck my hips, just so you have a visual, it looks a little bit like this. So here I'm going to tuck my hips, like so. I've extended the legs, the belt buckle's risen, it's pointing more upwards, my chest is to the sky. Tucked hips. The opposite, I'm in position, I'm going to do the same thing, but keep the knees flexed, keep the belt buckle and the chest pointing down. Didn't sound nearly as good on the screen. I promise you it doesn't look nearly as good either. That is the opposite of tucking your hips. So there you have a good visual for both. I said at the beginning that tucking the hips helps you to straighten your swing direction. What I mean is it helps you to not swing across the golf ball excessively, so it helps you eliminate your slice and work towards a draw. So if I'm in position, why does this happen? I'm right here, and what happens if I stay bent with my belt buckle and with my chest is that the club shaft is going to start to tip out like this. So it's going to make it out to in, and I'm going to finish very low with the hands are going to reappear behind my body in a very low position, like so. So this is the most out to in biased version of a swing. I'm in position, I'll do it and not tuck my hips. And the belt buckle's down, the chest is down, I'm coming right across the golf ball, and in this case I've pulled it straight to the left. So what happens if I make that same motion and I tuck my hips? As I tuck my hips, it's going to enable me to keep the club shaft coming more from the inside. My hands are going to reappear a little bit higher in relation to my shoulder. They're not going to be coming through quite so low. So that helps me straighten out my swing direction. So if I hit a shot here, what I should expect to see on the screen is a shot that starts a bit more to the right before coming back, because I've tucked my hips, or in part because I've tucked my hips. Something like so. So very important in terms of swing direction. If you don't tuck your hips, it's going to be more of a slice, more of an out to in. If you start to extend, tuck the hips, it's going to make it much easier to swing more outwards. I also said that tucking the hips would help me to hit the ball higher. Now, how does that work? And this is something even some very good players sometimes don't quite get right. So if I said to you, on what club would you have your hips the most forwards? Is it on a 9-iron or is it on a driver? And the answer is that the longer the club, the more you want the hips to go forwards. Why do you want the hips to go forwards longer? Well, because the longer the club, you're going to extend the most, and for your head not to pop upwards and to keep your inclination to the ground, this extension needs to be replaced by a side bend. So the extension needs to be replaced by a side bend. And as you're extending more on a longer club, you need more side bend in order to not pop up like a jack in the box. So you've got your long club in hand, and you need the hips to go the most forwards because you're going to extend the most. And what happens when you go forwards with the hips like this, it induces this side bend to the right. And as your side bends to the right like so, it's going to make the approach into the golf ball more shallow. If I had my hips further back and my shoulders directly above it, it'd make the approach into the ground much steeper. So if I exaggerate again and I play a shot, if I'm in position, don't tuck my hips, this is going to be the steepest descent into the golf ball. If I tuck my hips like so, this is going to be the shallowest approach into the golf ball. So much so that I can do these motions and barely graze the ground at all. Whereas if I'm not tucking my hips, you can really hear the thud of the club onto the ground. Tuck in the hips, much shallower stroke, much shallower contact. So that's helping you to hit the ball higher. Thirdly, I said it was going to help you hit the ball further. Well, it helps you hit the ball further because, like I just described, as you're coming through the ball and extending, that is a very powerful move. People nowadays talk about ground reaction forces. These are, of course, created by the body. It's a response to what you're doing. What are you doing to create those ground forces? You are extending. It's the act of not finishing in flexion and finishing, like all good players, with the chest upwards towards the sky and the belt buckle forwards and upwards also. So it's going to create speed for that reason, because you are extending more. It's going to create speed because your club head is approaching more from the inside. So potentially that gives you more time for the club head to approach the golf ball and generate potential speed. So to make that a little bit clearer, if I'm in position here, I make my downswing, I stay in flexion, club shaft starts to steepen. I'm at P6 here, club shaft parallel to the ground in the downswing, and there's maybe 36 inches here, or a little bit more, between the ball and my club head. If I come from the inside this time, because I'm extending and shifting the weight forwards, I'm tucking my hips more, suddenly at the same moment in time in the golf swing, P6, that 36 inches between the club head and the ball has doubled. So I have more time to accelerate the club head and therefore to generate club head speed and hit the ball further. So tucking the hips is really important because it's going to help you to straighten out your swing direction, get rid of the slice. It's going to help you to hit the ball higher and not make big divots into the ground. And it's going to help you to swing faster. I'd like to show you this visual to really further help you to understand what's happening. So if I do a swing here, I've got my club head behind the ball, and I'm going to keep the relationship between my upper body, my chest, and my arms constant. So I'm not going to raise my hands or lower my hands. I'm not going to rotate the forearms. I'm not going to hinge wrists. I'm going to keep them absolutely locked and still in position where they are. If I'm in position here and I keep all this locked and I don't tuck my hips, I stay flexed. So the knees are going to stay flexed, the belt buckle keeps pointing down, the chest is going to point down to the ground. What happens to my club head as I come through? You'll notice it's not raising, it's staying on the ground. So the golfers who get into this position with the hips back, belts to the ground, chest in flexion, how do they get the club head up off the ground and into the air? Guess what? By folding the arms like so. Your chicken wing, your oh so familiar chicken wing. If I do the same thing this time, so again, my relationship between my torso, my hands are constant. If I come through the ball and I start to extend, hip goes forwards, belt points to the sky, chest points to the sky, suddenly the club head is tracing the arc it's meant to come along. And you see how it's up in the air, not down in the ground. So I've got no need here to start to flex my arms. Furthermore, if you've ever seen a picture of your swing where you start to stall the hips a little bit, so your hips start to not move around and you see your club head start to rotate like this excessively. So from down the line, you see the club face rotate excessively like this. The club head enters the body here before the hands do. If you've seen this picture, there's a very good chance your pelvis is staying down for too long. So again, what happens, let's do one together. I'm gonna not tuck my hips, my knees are bent, my belt buckle's down. I can only turn this amount of degrees with my lower half. If I suddenly start to straighten my knees, raise the belt, suddenly you can see all these extra degrees of rotation appear as if by magic. I'm more supple, I'm more flexible than I thought I was. But in reality, it's not a flexibility issue. It's simply a mechanics, a technique issue. I was doing the wrong things. I wasn't tucking my hips. How do we work on it? First of all, be very aware of what it should look like. As usual, that is the most powerful thing. If you know what you're trying to achieve, you have a chance of doing so. But let's do a little drill to work on it. So what I like to try and do is a swing where you only go back 2 or 3 feet, and then you try and hit the ball from that position. So if I only go back 2 or 3 feet, and from here I'm trying to propel the ball forwards, and to do that, I really have to feel my legs straighten, my belt buckle go forwards, my chest go upwards towards the sky. And if for any reason one of those things doesn't happen, you then make the adjustment. I'm in position, a couple of feet back, and I'm extending from there. And because it's such a short backswing, and I'm still trying to create some speed, for me to create speed, it's really recruiting that from the extension pieces, from the tucking of the hips. If I do that again, a couple of feet back, and I'm really tucking my hips to create the speed in the club there. If I do it one more time, and I felt like I didn't do it quite right, so on this one, I'm gonna keep my knees a little bit too bent. And as a result, I haven't been able to turn my hips quite as much. I've had to fold my arms. I don't know if you saw that as I came through. From that position, I'm then adjusting myself so I'm back exactly where I want it to be. Get a golf ball back, I'll do it correctly. Couple of feet back. Tug the hips, raise the belt, extend to get into that final position. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you did enjoy the content, then please do like and subscribe and even share it with your friends. That's where you won't miss any of my future content. If you'd like to work with me on your swing, then you can do so wherever you are in the world using the Skillist app, or alternatively in person. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comments below. And just remember, weight forwards, shoulder down, hands in, arms straight, tuck hips, really define what a golf swing ought to be like. It separates the best players from the higher handicappers. Put these things into practice and you will play your best golf.